Welcome back to Long Story Long. I'm your host, Casey Peterson. Let's take it back for a full about me with what better than my birth, my conception, how I got here, and by who, and how it has affected me today. So just to give a little backstory, or maybe a lot of backstory, I am 31 years old, was born in 93. That may be elderly to some of you, and that may be childlike to some of you. But there's relatability for all of us and learn from my lessons in life. So let's talk about how I was conceived. Maybe not the nitty gritty. We won't get into too much tea with that, but basically how I got here and what led to me becoming the type of woman that I am today. In 1993, I believe my mom and dad were going into year 5 of their marriage. And let me preface this by I believe part of their marriage agreement or getting into this marriage was like they've already had previous marriages with kids, and this was like not the have kids marriage. So I was a whoopsie baby, you know, if you know, you know. And basically my dad confronted my mom like, I don't want this kid. And the preface of that was, God says to listen to your husband, and if I don't want this kid, that means you don't have this kid. And my mom, at the ripe age of 37, argued that no matter what, she was having me. So that put them into separation and divorce, all in the matter of her pregnancy, and my first year of life was a divorce process. So just to give you some background there, I never technically grew up in a household with a mom and dad dynamic, and I don't necessarily look at my father outside of he's biologically my father. And I'll get deeper into that. My mom's decision to keep me, not only with the marriage decision being something against my dad's wishes, but also at an older age. At the time, it was referred to as a geriatric pregnancy, which I kind of laugh at now. I'm 31. And what if I want children at 37? That should not be looked at as geriatric. Yeah. Excuse me. That obviously created a very unusual foundation, or maybe it is usual to some, as far as coming into a world where even my mom at the time was questioning the safety of herself and of me all the way up until my actual birth, to where it was so bad she was listed in the hospital initially as Jane Doe going into labor. And my dad was not there by choice. It was intentional. My mom did not want him there, and understood, which you will understand with the tea that I'm going to give you on my father. And just, full disclosure, I do not speak to this man. I haven't spoken to him in nearly a decade. Don't go look him up or find him and try to connect us. That is not why we're here, folks, okay? But basically, there was a lot of trauma that my mom endured just in the 9 months of carrying me, let alone the upbringing of raising me in her late 30s on her own, a single mom. Also, let me bring this point into play. My sister and I are 13 years apart. So she had a 13-year-old from a previous marriage and a newborn at once by herself as a single mom in the early 90s. Like, I still to this day, the older I get, the more and more I can't fathom or understood how she did it, let alone with the trauma and the chaos and the turmoil caused by her divorce from my father and the havoc he was wreaking on her life. And it's not funny. I'm laughing through it now. Maybe that's a trauma response. IDK. But pretty much throughout the pregnancy, there was a divorce actively going on. And within that divorce, there was confrontation around what led up to said divorce, outside of it just being, the pregnancy with me and choosing to keep the child, and that going against my father's wishes. So with that, one of the stories that really stood out to me was the cheating scandal that supposedly took place. And I may or may not have a sibling out there that is born within a matter of months of me, but pretty much my mom and sister both knew my dad had been cheating proactively prior to the separation, the divorce, the pregnancy announcement with me. And with that, my mom was like, we're going to catch this guy. We're going to look into it. We're going to have evidence for court that this guy was running around with who I think he was. And one of the funniest stories was just like them staking out a restaurant and hunting him down to see who he was with. And it wasn't just who he was with. It was what he was carrying. And it was a baby carrier with almost an identical potential sibling of mine. And I told my mom everything she needed to know. So no wonder he didn't necessarily want a kid at a later age in life, into this later marriage of his. I believe it was his third marriage with my mom's second with him. And no wonder. He also had another little baby running around. I mean, not confirmed, but there is that. And if there is a sibling that's lost out there from my dad who wants to connect with me, just don't. Not here for it. Promise I'm not salty. Another big no-no, and something that maybe I shouldn't share, but I'm going to share because that's the whole premise of why I'm doing this and oversharing and spilling my own tea and the tea of those around me, is during my mother's pregnancy and towards the tail end of the finalizing her divorce, separation, all of that jazz from my father, there was a point where even her and my sister were coming home from church and my dad had changed the locks on the home. So yeah, like what does that mean? My mom calls the cops, like, hey, my soon-to-be future ex-husband locked me out of our home. What do we do about it? Well, they go and pull the records or whatever it was on with the county or the city at the time. And what my dad did, which is so effed up, he actually owned both houses next to each other. And one was a rental property and one was a standalone home where my mother and sister and him had previously lived. And now just my sister and pregnant mom with me were living. Wait, I just blanked. Maybe, I don't know if this was a pregnancy story. This might be when I was a newborn. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I was there, maybe. In the belly, outside, regardless. I had basically changed all the locks, and with the city office or the county office, when the sheriff got involved, basically rewrote the leasing deed or whatever it was and changed the paperwork to where it was the reverse on the two homes next door to each other. Like it looked like the other guy, renter person, was the one who occupied the home, not my mom. So my mom, in turn, and sister, who was 13 at the time, and I believe either me in the belly or me as a newborn, were now homeless. And luckily connected back with the preacher and his wife from the church that they were attending, who were pretty privy to all that was happening with the divorce. They took in my mom and sister. So that in itself, I mean, that just shows you what a shady mofo my dad is. I also want a disclaimer that my dad was in my life every other weekend, court ordered, up until the point I was 18. And 90% of the stories I'm going to share that reflect back to my dad at a younger point, especially these stories where I was a baby, these are obviously not from my point of view. These were relayed to me not until my later part of life. What I do respect about my mom is she kept it very, like, as much as she was involved and she was going to court and she was dealing with my dad throughout my upbringing, she was really privy to, like, giving me information only if I asked for it and dug for it. Everything else was basically me drawing my own conclusions about my dad, my own opinions about my dad. She really genuinely wanted me to have a relationship with my dad, not to have daddy issues. But, I mean, hashtag daddy issues, that's the name of the episode, isn't it? That's why we're here. Pretty much. Another big story, and these are just all the red flags on my dad before I was even walking and talking, just to give you the backstory of, yeah, don't try to remedy me this, okay? My mom was pregnant and working at H&R Block, and again, I'm still confused. Maybe she was pregnant or maybe I was a newborn. Let's just disclaimer all of these stories from this baby Casey life. It's either I was in her belly or I was a newborn in that first year. But my mom was doing taxes, and this lady came in and said, hey, are you such and such? And she's like, yes, that's me. And are you here like for tax help, whatever? She sits down with my mom and basically says, listen, I know the father of your child is blank, and I am happy to know like you're getting a divorce and everything. I had to come connect with you because I heard that you might be having a girl. And I had to come forward because there was things done to me as a stepdaughter of his. I believe it was a stepdaughter or niece or something to that effect that were inappropriate. And it really is left to the imagination or insinuation because I never got the tea on what actually went down, and I don't believe my mother did either. But basically the warning label of the conversation was, I know you're having a daughter and I'm coming forward to share that this person did something really wrong to me. So wrong, it was actually taken to court against my father and inappropriate. So I didn't find any of that out until I was in my mid-20s, and I had already gathered that I wasn't effing with my dad and I was never talking to him again. That just was like the nail in the coffin. I have no intention of having a connection with him unless it's like a court proceeding that I have to go through. But pretty much, yeah, that's the foundational backstory. My dad was effed up. Well, get this. In the years of my life, those like detrimental years of growing up from baby, newborn, toddler, all of that, him and my mom are not together. They're legally divorced. And he decides to start fighting to see me. So instead of it being, hey, I don't even want this kid, we're getting a divorce because you're bringing this kid into the world, the argument then becomes, oh no, I'm going to see her and I'm going to see her every other weekend, and you're lucky I'm not trying to get custody of her. And these were things my mom, again, she wanted me to have a relationship with him. She did not want me to have daddy issues. So she was participating with it, wanting to make sure he got to see me when he wanted to see me. I'm a baby, all of the above. And he would just do the weirdest stuff, like dump out baby powder in my baby bag, spray cologne, put a random bikini picture of a chick he was seeing in my baby bag with my diapers when my mom came to pick me up. Really effed up weirdo shit. Not only that, my mom was hella paranoid, rightfully so, given the backstories I just gave you before, but also because this man did not want me brought into the world. And my mom went against his asking or demanding or whatever and literally got a divorce from her husband to bring me into this world against his will. So her thinking and I have to just give my baby up to this man every other weekend. Luckily, it was chaperone visits. It was court-ordered chaperone required visits. But again, these chaperones were friends and family of his. These weren't people my mom picked. It was people approved by the court that had to be in the room or in the car or on the excursion with my dad and me every other Sunday for this split custody situation. Well, the reason being, my mom was scared that he might try to kill me or hurt me or do something bad to me. And especially given the data here, I get it, Mom. No wonder you were freaked the freak out. That makes sense. And basically, I just don't have any recollection of too much of that childhood dynamic because I think I blurred a lot of it out, to be honest, and that's probably a trauma response. I don't know. But I always looked at myself as a single child, a single parent household child, which I was. I was in a single parent household my entire upbringing with my mom. My sister was in our house. Again, we're 13 years apart. Growing up, as far as with a sibling, she was only in the house until I was in pre-K, because when I was graduating pre-K, my sister was graduating high school. And I'm sure my mom was like, oh shit. Here we go again. I looked at it like I was a single child raised by a single mother with just this court-ordered responsibility where I had to see this man, my father, every other weekend. And I am thankful that my sister, even though she didn't live in our house, she lived really close by, and I still had to have that sisterly dynamic growing up. But because of the age difference and because we weren't under one roof specifically, we got to kind of bypass any of the dramas of sister in-house dynamics. We weren't stealing each other's clothes or boyfriends or having drama at school because we just weren't there. Instead, her and her friends were always this extension of our family because it was a small family unit considering it was just my mom, me, and my sister. And that too, that background with my mom and her family, that's her story to tell. But I never necessarily met or knew her parents, and she did have siblings, but I don't communicate with them. She does not communicate with them. So like I said, our family dynamic is very small. And I appreciate that because I think I refer to us as the Steel Magnolias. If you've seen the movie, I'm trying to be the Julia Roberts, the Dolly Parton, the Sally Fields. That's our personality types as far as strong-willed Southern women and solid unit. And honestly, I don't look at it like daddy issues, I need to be on a Dr. Phil episode and have a come to Jesus with my dad. I love that I had this background as far as this father or lack thereof dynamic because it truly groomed me into the woman and the independent woman that I am now, and allowed to see my mom in this single mother role, as challenging as I know that was for her. And obviously that creates several hiccups and multiple dynamics. But I got to see my mom thrive as a boss woman. I got to see her buy a home. I got to see her take me on trips. I got to see her do her thing. I got to see her fall on her ass. I got to see her broke. I got to see her dating. I got to witness all of that and got to see how my mom got herself through those things. And I didn't have this cookie cutter mom and dad dinner every night household situation. And for me, I'm thankful for that, because not that I don't want that in the future for myself or don't admire that in other families. It's something that I'm thankful for, the struggle that was presented or the adversity my mom faced as a single mom, or me being a single kid household, because it really has created me into the woman that I am today. And I'll be forever thankful for that. And also taught me from the very jump, it's not all what it's cracked up to be. So these marriages that look great, or these parents that look like they have it all together, it's not always that way. And there's nothing better about a married parent household, like out front, than the single parent household. There's nothing that makes it better or worse. It's all about what's happening behind those doors. And I'm very thankful for my upbringing. And that's where I'm saying, as much as it's daddy issues, it isn't. It is, but it isn't. So you're probably wondering, okay, I had court-ordered custody up until 18. So that was a required court-ordered situation where neither me or my mom really had much of a say. I was required by law to see my dad every other weekend. And that was determined after a big custody battle he put my mom through. I think I was in 4th and 5th grade. I had to testify in court. I had to meet in judges' chambers. And basically the conclusion of that custody battle was my dad getting the every other weekend. And keep in mind, my dad lived 3.5, 4 hours away from where we were living. And also he had property in South Florida Keys and in Brooklyn, New York. So out of state even. And he was pitching it that because my mom was this broke single mom, that it didn't make sense for her to raise me on her own. He could do a much better job and provide me with better education, a better home, a better he challenged her. He took her to court over it. And I was in the judge's chambers and I was going up against it. I was like, I don't know this man. I don't love this man. He might be my father, but listen, I'm not trying to go live with him. And I damn sure am not going to let him sit here and drag me and my mom through all of this. Also draining my mom dry as far as court fees and all of the above. But basically the court concluded that there was some mental instability with me not loving my biological father and potential brainwashing by my mom. So they had court-ordered psychiatry ordered to me, as well as my dad getting his wish, not with custody, but with every other weekend. Yeah. Gotta love that. Also, I have to say how shady boots the court system was, because not only was the psychiatry thing like this wild conclusion of oh, she doesn't love her father, she needs to see a psychiatrist. It happened to be a psychiatrist my dad went golfing into church with, and he was dating my dad's girlfriend's daughter. Is that not a conflict of interest that was the psychiatrist that I had to report to? Yeah, right. I'm thinking what you're thinking. And with that, I remember I would just nuck if you buck at all these psychiatry things, like the butterfly test and the what do you see when you pee and look in the toilet? What do you see when you open your eyes and first wake up? I was making up all kinds of stuff. I was fucking with this guy in our meetings. I'd just be acting like I was this little terrible kid, and I wasn't. I really wasn't. I can be outlandish and funny and goofy, but I really was genuinely a straight A student doing all the things: theater, soccer, musical theater. I'm in swimming. I'm in cheerleading. I'm doing all the stuff, and I'm social, and you would never know that I'm going to court-ordered psychiatry. And there's no knock on that for you. If you need to see it, absolutely seek professional help. Absolutely go to therapy. But your girl was in the 4th and 5th grade, required by law to do this. And not only that, required by law to do that in addition to seeing someone, my biological father, that was required. And I didn't want to see. I was missing birthday parties every other weekend. I was missing trips with my own family every other weekend. I was missing just quality time of life that I wanted to have to myself or to my mom or to my friends, to my town, to this man that I did not care for. And that never really changed. That dislike and not caring for vibe held true, and I consistently had things happen in those years up until 18 that made me I freaking despise this guy, and I cannot wait for the day where I do not have to be required by law, where me and my mom will get punished if I don't see this man. So let's bring it to my 18th birthday. My dad met me for lunch and met me halfway for lunch because, again, he lived like 4 hours away. And I just remember the snarkiest, weirdo lunch. We were at Cheddar's in Macon, which I do love Cheddar's, but it's like, does that just show you like how this man wanted to celebrate my 18th birthday? Also, that was going into my senior year of high school. I'm a September baby. And with that, I had gotten accepted into Excel dual enrollment, which is where you take college early. So I was in like 16 credit hours for college my senior year of high school and only taking one physical class at my high school. Everything else was out of college. And basically with our child support agreement and things like that, it was just bare minimum required whatever. And my dad was like retired, not actively working, so it was a very small rate. And with that, my mom or me or whenever things like the Excel dual enrollment or if I wanted to be in student council, those things would always come up throughout high school, and I would try to lean on my dad like, hey, I'm in the beta club or I'm in Spanish club. Can you help split this trip or split this, enrollment or this event, or I have to sell so many of these things to be a part of this. And it was always like a face off, like your mom, what does she do with the child support? Like, why can't she pay for that? What is she doing with the money I already gave her? Yada, 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 all that. So for the 18th birthday, it was no different. My dad helped pay towards, I think it was like $240 worth of books that I needed for that freshman year of college. Essentially, again, senior year of high school was my freshman year of college in a way, on paper. And I was required to get these books, like $250 worth of books. And my mom and him split the book costs. And he basically wrote in the birthday card that was the gift, that he hoped I wasn't expecting anything just because I'm turning 18, and that it was like my decision to do this excelled learning program. So, whatever. Also, mind you, both of my grandparents on his side had passed away. My granddad passed away when I was like 2, his dad, and then my grandma passed away when I was like 14. And I didn't really know anything about my granddad. I don't really even know if I have a picture with the man. But my grandma on his side was definitely someone I was closer to. She had her own little wits about her. I mean, the fact that she was this man's mom is already like, what? But I did love her, and I was close to her. So I always thought, there might be some kind of trust or, will, where she willed me something, and I would get it at 18 or whatever. No. My dad gave me $18 in ones, and it was like a joke, like something, I don't know I don't know. What does that mean? Yeah, I don't know either. Not to mention, let me just long story long it even more. When my grandmother actually passed away when I was 14, my dad took everything from her apartment in Brooklyn, brought it into Georgia in like one of those storage pods, and basically emptied it into his garage and guest bedroom at his house, one of his houses. And he let his girlfriend and her daughters and her mom at the time just ravage through my grandmother's things and take whatever they wanted. And this is before he let me even go through it. And what is actually hilarious is I remember I wanted like one of her mink furs, like, because she was like from Brooklyn, and it was like her whole thing and her like costume jewelry and all that. It was all gone. Like anything that seemed semi-valuable, like her handbags or her coats, all gone. And I remember just digging around to see if I could find her Bible. Backstory, she was from Norway, and she had her Biblian, which is a Norwegian Bible, and I was basically trying to find that. And she did pass away in a Norwegian nursing home in Brooklyn and lived in like a Norwegian borough. And, being half Norwegian through her and her husband, and through my dad's side, it was something I take like a little bit of pride in, and I had been to Norway and visited family and friends over there. So I was like, let me try to find something from Norway. And I found the Bible, and what was hilarious about this is there was actually this little like catch-all box of all these random clip-on earrings, costume jewelry, like fake pearls. And at the bottom of the box was her wedding band, her husband's wedding band, her engagement ring, her nice brooches were all hidden at the bottom of like this junk drawer. So I actually took all of that, and I didn't even tell my dad, because at that point I was like, if he knows there's anything of value in here that he didn't already get, or his like girlfriend and her kids and whatever wiped out, he's gonna like take it from me. So I just was like, yeah, I'm taking her Bible. and some pearl, like this pearl necklace or whatever, but I technically have all those things. And I just looked at it like her nodding, like a little like wink, like, yeah, that's the least I could get from that situation. That was at like 14. So at 18, me thinking that there's some kind of trust or there's some kind of something from my grandparents' will, null and void. And if there was, I can guarantee you my dad rigged or hacked something to take it, and I have never seen it. And it's not about just those things, but I'm just telling you that's just how corrupt and crooked that man is and was, or I don't even know if he's alive, TBH. But so yeah, obviously there's a way more long stories that I can get into about that, but that's just the 0 to 18 side of the dad land of things. And I went a good 2.5 years, I believe, not talking to him at all, going into college, funding myself through scholarships and working 4 different odd jobs, not communicating with him, just really looked at it like he was a negative figure that I was required to see by the court. So like, can I not see him anymore? Sure, that's what I did. And I remember he did some weird stalkery, like find me type of stuff in college that creeped me the freak out. And I was like completely paranoid and distraught about like being found by this man. And I don't know why. I mean, it wasn't like a fear. It was more of just like a paralyzing feeling about like, if this person tries to come back into my life, I don't want them here. And they're just bad energy altogether. And also not knowing someone's moral compasses and like what they're capable of. That is like, I have no idea what that man is capable of. But then I started dating this one guy and it got really serious. He was in the military and he was doing the whole marry me energy, like within the first like 3 to 4 months of us dating. And I remember him saying, I don't feel comfortable with us getting engaged or married or planning a family or moving or any of that stuff with you not having a relationship with your father. And I think that your father is a big deal. Like he's going to be the grandkid of our kids, and like you need to be talking to this man, and like you need to kindle and build that bridge. So I sent like this big email, like this heartfelt, oh my gosh. And again, spearheaded by another man or boy. Let's just call him a boy because this mofo was no man. And he's a little crooked ass shit too. No wonder he wanted me to connect with my dad. Anywho, so I reconnected with my dad. That was at 21. And basically had like 1.5 to 2 years after that where I was reconnected with him. Went on a trip or two to visit him. Would casually catch up on the phone. But no, it just proved, even as an like adult woman looking at this guy, like I still don't fuck with you, and you are really strange and corrupt, and I don't know what potential quality you offer in life, and I damn sure don't know if there was one, which one I got from the guy. So again, that was me in the 21-year-old to like 22 era, still convinced like I'm not needing a relationship with this man. And I'm glad. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I did reach back out and reconnected with him as a younger adult, because it just further solidified all of those childhood memories and traumas and things that, yeah, I don't need to have this person in my life at all, regardless of what they think or they do bring to said table. The table does not exist here. No, thank you. And so that just gives you a little bit of background. I'm very thankful for being raised by a single mother. I'm very thankful for having the age gap with my older sister and essentially getting like a secondary perspective of like someone a little older than me, a whole different like lease on life as far as what my mom has been through and seeing her through, like I said, all those different eras, and getting to watch that, I think is honestly a blessing. And it's so many life lessons wrapped into one life. And I look and laugh all the time and say, we are like cats with 9 lives. And even more so than that, if you dial back, or for me specifically, even just to 6 months ago, let alone 6 years ago or 16 years ago, like so many different lifetimes have already been lived by me. And that's where we are getting to long story long, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of things, and I'm treating this like my own personal therapy session, just trauma dumping with you guys. But I had to give a little backstory there, because when I think about, if I dial it all the way back to my conception and me, even who I am, my about me, my bio, what brought me here, how I even got here, one of the first things I think of, and what is a big pillar in my upbringing, is the fact that I wasn't necessarily even wanted by person that made me. And then my mom, who did want me and obviously went to hell and back to keep me and bring me into this world, having to fight for me through the next 18 years of her life. It's just a wild, like, that really is a huge pillar to my story, and it does need to be shared. And like I said, I just breezed over the top of a lot of detail that I could have included here, and maybe we'll hash into deeper daddy issues in the future. Just had to give that backstory, and then to also just further emphasize just the different lives that were being lived. With my dad, he was retired airline. I'm not going to say which one, the big one. If you're one, yeah, the big one that everybody loves, that one. He had been with them for over 35 years in Atlanta, and I believe out of New York and Miami as well. And so when he retired, he had properties kind of scattered everywhere, and he had an awesome retirement package with unlimited standby travel through that airline and inherited to his family. So his, like, whoever he's married to, he has a companion pass, and then children get the same kind of privileges that he gets as well. So with our divorce, or not our divorce, but like the custody agreement that we had, and me having to be court ordered to see him every other weekend, he did have a Georgia house, like I said, that was about 4 hours away, but he also had these other properties, one in New York and in Florida. So it wasn't always just a car ride for 4 hours. Sometimes it was a car ride for 4 hours to an airport for me to then fly standby to connect to get to whatever city he was in for that weekend. And what was wild about it is I was living in this rural, small South Georgia town. Like, I graduated with like 60 people, middle of nowhere town, one red light. The closest Walmart or like Chick-fil-A or McDonald's is like 25 to 35 minutes away, and middle of nowhere. And not only that, I was living in a trailer, and that's not a knock on anyone living in a trailer. I'm just trying to paint the picture that it was not this like glamorous life that I was living. And it was such a weird imposter syndrome or like Hannah Montana feeling of going from that and going from that population of people in town, very low socioeconomic environment, to I'm on like business class flight into JFK airport and spending the weekend in New York. Like, it just was strange. And I felt like it was it's also, that is probably the biggest blessing, I will say. Not the traveling, not the stress of flying standby and hopping around, but the exposure that I got to different cultures was amazing through that upbringing, because I had a nice blended, I mean, really like not nice blended. I mean, it was a wild blend of everything being thrown into the blender. But between, visiting in New York, seeing family there, also like really leaning in and trying to learn about the Norwegian heritage with my family from that side, as well as visiting him in the Florida Keys, like barefoot at church on Sundays, roasting a pig on the beach for sunrise service, just hanging around on the boat or swimming with a manatee. Like, that was like a wild world that I got to be a part of through that split custody. And I'm not saying that's due to my dad. That was just the environment we were in. And I will say I learned very early on, it's not where you are, it's who you're with. Because even in all of these settings, even if we flew and traveled to Europe, which we did, or to New York or to the Keys or wherever, I still found myself crying on the plane or texting my friends, or my MySpace, Facebook status, or whatever. That's totally aging myself. Was saying like, I don't want to be here. Like, I truly felt like I had so much angst and so like teenage dirtbag energy in my brain when I was forced to spend time with him. A lot of myself could not appreciate that I was on a flight, or that I was in this city, or that I was seeing this place. And as much as I really did try to lean in and take the culture from it all, I was still just like despising the fact that I was court ordered to be there. And I will say, like I said, looking back on it, I'm thankful for the culturing that came with that, and just seeing all these different cultures, going through airports, being on planes with different people. And keep in mind, I was an unaccompanied minor 9 times out of 10. Wasn't flying with him or with my mom, to get to these places. Not only that, eventually started taking like a transportation service just to get to the airport, because it was 4 hours from where I was living. And even with that, my dad stopped putting me as unaccompanied minor, changed my birth date in the system. I think I was like 12 or 13, or I think I was 12. And he he finessed something and did something to lie to where I was not required to have the unaccompanied minor star on my tickets anymore, because he said that delayed me having connections to certain flights, or me being on the standby list. So that was messing stuff up for him. So he went in and rigged something and then told me not to tell my mom because she would kill him. Like, that wasn't the thing. So that was a whole thing. But then he was mad at my mom for putting me in like the airport transportation van to get to the airport, instead of her having to make an 8-hour commute just to take me to the Atlanta airport. Like, 4 hours there, 4 hours back, just to drop me off and then come back and pick me up at the end of the weekend, every other weekend. Like, that is absurd. Absurd. But that was how we rolled until I was 18. And like I said, I'm thankful for the culturing that came from a lot of that, and the travel and those type of experiences. And, my mom was an amazing provider in those ways too, and very sure that that wasn't proper English. She consistently tried to make sure that I was taken care of, and not just taken care of, like, I was spoiled to the best of the ability, and to where a lot of those single mom woes when I was younger that I would not understand, because my mom spoiled me so much in so many ways that I wasn't really cognizant to, like, I'm being raised by a single mom and we're struggling. We did go through years of that. A custody battle was a big thing that kind of robbed her and wrecked her world, with missing work, having to pay for the attorney. She eventually ended up representing herself. Like, I cannot even freaking imagine what she had to endure with that, on top of like losing in some capacity, and me still being court ordered to see him every weekend was just wild. There was definitely some downs there. And then obviously moving from the area we were in when she first bought a house and owned that, to like, there was like own kind of recession that happened. Moving to South rural Georgia, living in a trailer. I mean, I lived there from 6th grade to my senior year of high school. And I'm very thankful it was on family property through my aunt and uncle. And we literally lived in like 140 acres in the woods. And I was just like this wild little southern country girl one day. And then I'm on a flight to Brooklyn, and I'm little like half Norwegian, airline girl, whatever. I don't know what you want to call it, but I got cultured in so many ways that I'm thankful for now, and I have callbacks to now as an adult that I'm like, that's really cool that I got to experience that. And there's so many ways that I want to go back and re-experience things now, like being in my 30s, and just to have like a new take on like certain travels or certain experiences, because I really was jaded, maybe more self-induced than anything at those ages, and the circumstances of what brought me those opportunities. I would rather experience them now without said circumstances. But yeah, that's a long story long. I'm going to try to keep this under the 50-minute mark, just to give you that backstory of how I got here, the origin story of me, which in turn is semi-related or mostly related to my daddy issues that are just a huge part of me. And these issues are not things that I'm mad about. I'm actually thankful for that upbringing. I'm thankful for how it all turned out for me and molded me into the woman I am today.